do you turn a vision into a reality, and how can one person make a global impact? Today, you'll find out how a first-year undergraduate at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill did just that. Welcome to the Hard Skills Show with me, Dr. Mira Brancu. On this show, we discuss how to develop the nuanced, hard skills needed to drive significant systemic change and make real impact through your leadership. And today's show is unique in that we're combining learning from our guest while also doing a little on-air coaching for her as she thinks through the next leadership development growth steps that she has ahead of her. So be ready, reflect deeply, take notes, I always do, and identify at least one small step to further develop your hard skills muscle. And I'm sure that she will inspire you to do this. So today's guest is Aynsley Szczesniak, and we'll be talking about how this young social entrepreneur, she is 17, first-year student, UNC Chapel Hill, transformed an idea into an implementable action plan, scaled it up to reach a broader audience and have a wider impact, and is now developing her leadership identity and vision for the future on a global scale. Now, this is a really great focus for season 3, which is focused on the third stage of my strategic leadership pathway model, mapping a strategy. Making an impact, which she also has done, is the 5th season. So we're not going to spend too much time today on that piece as much as how we map out the strategy to get there, but you'll definitely hear a lot about that. So great to have you on the show, Aynsley.
Thank you so much for having me. And how am I supposed to follow an introduction like that?
Oh, let me tell you more. Audience, let me tell you more. Aynsley
Oh,
Szczesniak,
goodness.
the founder and executive director of Speak Out Sisterhood, a global network empowering youth to eradicate barriers of equality for women in STEM. She's also the founder and state lead of the North Carolina chapter of Million Women Mentors, the student STEM programs chair of the Association of Women in Science, North Carolina, and a research assistant for the UNC School of Medicine Prepare project. And did I mention already she's only in her first year at the university? Like, my first question, Aynsley, to you is, what do you do for fun? How do you relax? All of this is like big, serious stuff.
Well, I love that question. And I do love to joke that I am very type A in the sense that relax is not a word in my vocabulary, but I swear I do it. My roommate and I actually just went to go see a show at the Playmakers Theater here at UNC the other night. It was Murder on the Orient Express. It was so good. But I love going to musicals and plays, and I would definitely say that's one of my favorite ways to just step away from my life and immerse myself in a story or an adventure or a musical, and just take a break for a bit. So I would definitely say that's my favorite way to relax.
Love it. Love it. Murder on the Orient Express. I love Agatha Christie. Always
Yes,
have
it
since I
was
was
so
young.
good.
Yes. So how did you become interested in empowering women in STEM? What's your story?
So I'd say it really started in high school when I founded a high school club for female identifying students who were interested in STEM, because I noticed we didn't have much at my high school that was focused on that. So I was like, okay, let's just create it myself. And so that was in my junior year, and we eventually we doubled our membership senior year and started pursuing collaborations with other clubs that were sort of STEM focused, but not our very niche focus. And it's continued to thrive to this day. It's so great to get status reports from my friends who took on leadership after I left, and that journey of creating this community of young women who were really passionate about STEM and empowering others who were interested as well, really sparked my interest in this being something that I wanted to continue to do beyond high school. And particularly, one of the components of that club was bringing in a woman scientist at every meeting. And there was this one woman in particular who really, really sparked something in me. Her name was Fatou Diop, and she's a a PhD candidate at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. We've stayed close, and she was really, really inspiring to me because she came on to our meeting and she was talking about her experiences as a woman in STEM, but so candidly, more than I'd ever heard somebody talk before. She talked about how with her menstrual cycle, she often didn't feel like she had the support she needed in her studies and in college and beyond, when she was experiencing especially heavy flow and cramps and things. And that always kind of stuck in the back of my mind. But it wasn't until I started getting more involved with the Association for Women in Science that the idea of pursuing justice for women in STEM and equity for women in STEM became something that I could see myself really developing as more than just this kind of side passion. Because I am a pre-medical student, I've always wanted to go into medicine. So STEM has always been a part of me in that sense. But the idea of not just entering medicine and making my mark through taking care of patients, but also by reforming the system itself to make it more equitable, not just for me, but for other women like me, um, became something that I really started to envision as a possible career and a future for myself. So I would say, in terms of empowering women in STEM as being a passion of mine, then it's both that personal connection, being a woman myself, and feeling those same uh, things that we hear about a lot of imposter syndrome and gender bias. I've seen it just in my first year here at college. And then also that experience of starting to realize that there are inequities and there are, and life is not perfect in STEM. And I have the power as somebody who is going into STEM myself to do something about that. And I want to do something about that.
Uh, that's very inspiring. I love that you saw a need and wanted to fill it. And you thought, what could I do? Not a lot of people think, is there something here that I can do myself to make a difference? But you stepped into it. And you felt a sense of sort of a pull to responsibility for making that change. And that in and of itself, I think it can be very inspiring to a lot of people, right? Who are frustrated with the way things are and maybe think, what's one person, what can one person do? But one person can do a lot. And for you, the one person that you invited did a lot for you by simply telling her story. And there was something that I really appreciated about her story, which is that sparked an interest in you, which is that she was open and candid about the experience of sex and gender impacting her lived experience going through a STEM career. There's not a lot of people who are willing to talk about menstruation, flow, right? Like, these are taboo subjects. Women don't talk about menopause. They don't talk about fertility treatments. They don't talk about undergoing breast cancer treatments while they're in a leadership role, because they worry about, understandably so, the judgments they've already experienced in the past, and will it come back again? And how will that impact my career? Right.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
there's a couple of questions that come up for me as you were talking. And I think it connects to how you identify yourself on the website as a proactive STEMinist. So let's talk about what is justice in the STEM field for women. What is equity? How do you define that? How do you define being a proactive STEMinist who focuses on justice and equity for women in STEM?
I love that. That's a really great question. Um, so I'll start with the equity and justice because I feel like those are words that everybody has their own personal definition of. Personally, when I think of justice, I think of having agency over your life and being able to choose your own destiny. Autonomy is something that's really important to me. And because I recognize how when you feel like you are in control, it's very empowering. It makes you feel secure and safe and able to be yourself authentically and to the fullest. And I feel like when we are saying, justice for women, in my eyes, that means giving women the chance to chart our own stories and not be told by others that we have to do something a certain way, or we don't belong in a certain space. That's unjust. That's taking away our choices and our destiny, and our ability to shape our destiny. And then similarly, equity, in my opinion, is not necessarily everybody being on the same level, because that is just not feasible. I think equity is about having the opportunity to achieve your fullest potential without having these barriers. So rather, I'm a math minor, so I think a lot in terms of like formulaic sometimes. And so equity is not necessarily the absent or everybody on the same equivalent path, because we all are on different paths. Rather, it's the elimination of barriers that prevent you from achieving that path that you have been that you want to chart for yourself. So that's why with my organization, Speak Out Sisterhood, we focus not necessarily on creating this harmonious, beautiful, utopian world, because that does not exist. Rather, we focus on what are these things that are stopping women from getting to where we want to be, and how can we break those down. So equity in that case is about breaking down these barriers that are stopping us from advancing in STEM. And so where that ties in with my own identity, yes, proactive is definitely a word I'd use to describe myself. I pride myself on being proactive and not only seeing things that are wrong, but taking action to address them. Because like you said, I am just one person, but that if I don't act, who else is going to? And if I do act, maybe I can inspire somebody else to follow me. And that's something that I've definitely seen with building Speak Out Sisterhood. Just the amount of people who have reached out, who have just been interested in helping out in any way that they can. It's inspiring because it shows that one person's choice to step outside the status quo and shed light on an issue that a lot of people feel very deeply can unite people in a way that maybe wouldn't have happened if somebody hadn't taken that first step. So that's why proactivity is really a core value of mine, and something that I try to really hone in on as a leader.
Beautifully said. And I really I just want to put a fine point on, like, we hear these sort of jargon words, buzzwords around justice and equity. Mm-hmm. And Aynsley just explained it so beautifully and simply. It's just about everyone having the choice to decide their path, and the opportunity to take that path by having the barriers removed that are systematically holding one group back versus another. And in this case, it's women in STEM, right? Absolutely. So it's really quite simple that nobody wants to be held back because of barriers that are specific to some group they're part of. And nobody wants to not have a choice in charting their path, right? So when we come back from these ad breaks that I'm going to share with you about, let's talk about how you started visioning this bigger picture of Speak Out Sisterhood, how you got there. So we are entering an ad break. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest, Aynsley Szczesniak. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll be right back with our guest in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Aynsley Szczesniak. All right, we just got done talking about her being a proactive STEMinist and what that meant. And what I'm curious now is, you got this spark, you were inspired. How did you sort of get to this vision of Speak Out Sisterhood? Like, what were those initial sort of realizations and then action steps to start this up?
I love this question because I always love recounting this story, because it's one of those stories where you look back and you're like, all of these pieces fit perfectly into place to get me to where I am today. But I won't bore you with the whole long story. I'll start at really the impetus, which was a conference that I went to in October 2023. When I write my memoir, I will make a whole chapter about this conference because it is probably the most pivotal moment in my life. So it was the STEM Innovation Forum in Denver, Colorado, hosted by STEM Connector and STEMX. I was invited to it by the woman who's the National Stage Chair of Million Women Mentors. And at the time, I didn't really know what it was going to be like because I'd never been to a conference before. So I was just like, oh, cool, people who are interested in STEM. Okay. So I got there and I was really surprised because there were some incredible people there. Like some truly powerful trailblazers for diversity, equity, inclusion, and STEM were there. Literally, the first guy that I met, I asked him to take a picture of me in front of the building. So I was like, oh, it's Senator Scarmans. He actually turned out to be probably one of the most instrumental people in helping me build Speak Out Sisterhood. His name's Dr. Jamie Vernon. He's the executive director, I believe, of Sigma Xi, which is an international honor society for science. And he and I spent the second day of the conference basically in a brainstorming session, because the previous day I attended sessions and I started realizing, there are so many organizations here who are dedicated to advancing women in STEM. They want to make STEM more equitable. And I was thinking also about my friends at UNC and my friends in high school, and how we all were young people who were also just as eager to see women advance in STEM. And something that it hit me when I was there, that there is nothing that's really bridging that gap between these young people who care so much and these organizations who also care so much, but are missing that vital perspective of the next generation of leaders. And so through brainstorming with and just conversing with some of the leaders who were at the conference, I started to realize, I should do something about this. I have the resources and these people who are all want to see me want to see something change in the way that STEM is created, and I'm going to be part of that. And what can I bring? I can bring the unique perspective of a young person, and not only that, I can bring other young people along with me. So that's where the initial idea of Speak Out Sisterhood came about. If you could see all of the iterations of like plans and ideas, and I'm a very visual person, so there were a lot of very terrible drawings of like possible organization structure designs that eventually became the Speak Out Sisterhood that we are today. And even now we're continuing to evolve and thinking about the future, which is definitely something I'd love to get your thoughts on later in this conversation. But ultimately, those first action steps, I think, were assembling a team of people, because I realized very quickly that I had this idea and I really wanted to do it, but I cannot do everything on my own. I definitely learned that in high school as well. And so I started just by posting on my Instagram and posting on my LinkedIn, like, hey, I want to build this. I'm looking for a team of people who are interested. And from there, we built an executive team. All of us, we met by chance. And now we have a core team of people who are really invested in the work that we're doing and want to see our organization grow. And so from building our team, I think, was where we started to think about, okay, what do we actually want to do? And that was a whole nother weeks and months of thinking, because we ultimately, I'd say, we had to really make our vision. We were all young. We all were like, there's so many issues we want to solve. I could go on and on about all of the issues that women face in STEM. And it's, to an extent, it's good to have that sort of broader understanding of the state of women in STEM, but it's also recognizing that we cannot do everything. So we had to really hone in on what's the key pieces of this work that we want to focus on. And my mind would always go back to this one particular session at the conference. It was the keynote, I believe the second day of the conference, by Dr. Lisa Hinkleman, who is the founder and executive director of an organization called Ruling Our Experiences, or ROCs as they're known. And I would say that session really completely shifted my worldview, because she was talking about research that they had done on girls' confidence and girls' self-esteem, and things that haven't really been discussed or looked at very much. And just these staggering statistics that she shared about, the girls who have described themselves as confident, it's dropped by 20% since 2017, or 55% of girls don't think they want to be leaders because they're afraid of being bossy. And just crazy and a not mind blowing, but just really they statistics that really stick with you. And that stuck with me. And so ultimately we decided that we wanted to focus our efforts on not just providing a space for young women to be engaged in this work and advocating for equity in STEM, but specifically focusing on equipping women, and young women in particular, with the strength and the skills and the knowledge to overcome these challenges and be the confident leaders that are going to take us into the future. So all that to say, go to conferences, because you'll meet people who will change your life. And that's really where we got our start.
Yeah, this is a fantastic story, and I'm going to build on go to conferences. There's 6 steps that I heard that are specifically a way to get to where you started, to where people might want to land using your story. So conference in your professional interest. You might not have any experience, but go to that conference anyway. The second is be willing to network and connect. Do not sit in the background. It's not the time. Be willing and open to connect, and then be open to possibilities and opportunities that are coming your way through those like random conversations that you have with people. But especially when you're hearing trends being shared by thought leaders who are already identifying the gaps and possibilities, listen carefully. Then what you did, which not everybody does, which is apply the possibilities to the gaps that you see all around you. You thought back to your situation and their context, and you thought, I can see a connection here, right? So that is pinpointing a need with an opportunity. And number 5, assemble a team. And you can do that by inviting people in and tapping into your network, right? You don't think about this as, I have to do all of this by myself. It's not realistic in this day and age. And then develop alignment around the mission and vision, so that you feel you all are on the same page about the impact you actually want to make out of all of the sort of gaps or problems that you identify. Where do we feel our best efforts should lie? So that is the plan. That's your roadmap for everybody else, everyone.
I love that. I love that. And one thing I would add to that is, to the networking part, I know that clearly I am an extrovert and I embrace that wholeheartedly, but networking can be really hard when you aren't naturally inclined to just walk up to people who look cool and start talking to them. So one thing that one of my professors was talking about the other day, because I'm in a class that's actually very similar to this topic of it's called the art and science of expertise. But one of the things that she was mentioning is, when you are an introvert and you still want to network, do it in your way. Like, you don't have to be the person who goes up and talks to 80 people on the first day. Maybe you spend some time researching who's there and choosing the few very specific people that you really want to go talk to, and you find them and you talk to them, and that's your way of networking, rather than sort of casting the wide net and seeing if you connect with anybody who's interesting and who can help you with your career. So I would say that when it comes to that networking piece, yes, it's a huge part of identifying issues and pursuing them, but don't feel like you have to do it the same way that everyone else does. It's very much about charting your own journey, using that sort of template as the starting point.
Absolutely. It's about connection, not about it's quality over quantity.
Yes.
So we are entering another ad break. When we come back, Aynsley, let's get into like, where are you going now? Let's talk about and think about the future and where you see the challenges and the needs. And we'll get into a little coaching there too, as well. So listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest, Aynsley Szczesniak. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on LinkedIn or YouTube at talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back with our guest in just a moment.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Aynsley Szczesniak, who is the founder and executive director of Speak Out Sisterhood, as well as a leader of many other STEM-based support systems out there for women in STEM. So every leader at every level of their development sees different kinds of challenges. Your first challenge was just, what are we going to do to answer this problem, right? The visioning part. And next came, who's going to come along with me? And developing that team. And there were many other new challenges that you faced and work through at each level. As you lead your nonprofit into the next stage, what are the challenges that you see as it starts growing?
I would say definitely planning for the future while we're still learning who we are now. It's hard to kind of straddle that because on one hand, we're still sort of figuring out what our executive team structure is going to look like, what our leadership structure is going to look like. But at the same time, we also have to think about, where do we want to be in the next year? Where do we want to be in the next 2 years, 3 years? What's our budget going to look like? What's our goals? Because the world, I have realized, lives very much in the future. Whenever you're talking to people about partnerships, it's not about, let's do something tomorrow. It's, let's look at next fall or maybe the summer. And so you really have to be able to think 6 months in advance or a year in advance. And for an organization that's still trying to figure out who we are every day by day, it's been a bit of a struggle to balance that. But it also has been exciting because we get to experience that thrill of ideation and creating something from scratch. And it's just a lot of having to trust one another and knowing that maybe we're gonna navigate some rocky patches as we find our footing, but it takes time, and every day we learn something new. So that being said, I would say that the main challenge really has been exactly what we're talking about on this episode about how do we plan for the future when we may not even know yet what we want to do in the present, or rather who we are in the present, because we know what we want. We know where we want to be. We know what our passions are, but it's just about how do we quantify that in a time-bound and realistic way.
Yeah. And so how far have you gotten? Where are you finding the hard skills around this?
So we know generally what our vision is for the next year and the next 2 years, etc. Because because of that initial foundation we laid where we specified exactly what our what we would do, what we'd be known for. So to add some context, my organization, Speak Out Sisterhood, we are a global network for young women in STEM. And what we particularly are focusing on right now is a program called Generation Yes, which stands for Young Empowered STEMinists. And I realized that I did not define that word earlier. STEMinist is just a fun kind of mix of STEM and feminist. I can't take credit for it. I learned it from somebody else, but it's one of my favorite words. And so this program, Generation Yes, is an 8-week internship remote for college-age women where they work in teams of 4, matched with an advisor who's a professional woman in STEM, and as well as a partner, one of our partner organizations. And each internship, we have 5 currently running right now. Each internship track of sorts is focused on a key barrier that women face in their pursuit of a STEM career. So for instance, one of them is menstrual health equity. One is the gender pay gap. One is women in leadership, and particularly looking at the advancement of women through leadership. And one is mentorship for women in STEM. And then our 5th one is the one that's kind of my personal favorite, is women's health equity. So looking at the intersection of healthcare inequities and women's pursuit of STEM careers. That being said, we are the idea of the internship is to engage these young women in first intensive research, looking at what are the barriers that currently exist and building that knowledge that's essential for being an expert in something and being able to speak well and eloquently and knowledgeably about it. Secondly, we're currently running the program right now, so we're in this stage now, so it's very relevant. The action items portion of it, where they'll be taking this knowledge that they've gained and saying, okay, what are the key solutions that we can see emerging here? What are the strategies that others have proposed or that we ourselves can see? And ultimately compiling those into an action plan that then pitch to the company with whom we've partnered. So for instance, we're working with the Science Policy Action Network. Shout out to Dr. Richard Watkins if you're listening to this. And they are one of our partners where we're investigating women's health inequities. And we're also working with them to look at financial barriers to women's success in STEM. And so ultimately our teams of interns who are working on those topics would be creating an action plan saying, these are the things that we need to do with you to eradicate some of these barriers that we've isolated. And so with that context, our idea for the program is to treat it as the first step towards making systemic change. So assembling cohorts of young women who care so much about this, equipping them with the knowledge and the confidence to fight for what they believe is needed to create change, and creating the space and the foundation for them to ultimately implement these changes. So our more specific goals are to expand the Generation Yes program and to acquire more partners, to allow for more interns. We currently have 20 right now, but we had 53 people apply for the initial program. So we know that the interest is out there and we want to see it grow. And so thinking about how we can continue to provide more opportunities for young women, not just in our immediate areas, but around the globe. We have teams working to extend our outreach across the globe. So that's another component. And then on a more, I would say more specific kind of nitpicky level is our program itself, thinking about how can we refine it to be most effective, because our interns, they follow a leadership professional development curriculum that and when I say curriculum loosely, there's not like, you get a quiz and then if you get, 8 out of 10 questions right, you get a B kind of thing. It's more of just a framework that teaches different professional skills. And so we are by far not experts in leadership curriculum development. And so thinking about how can we engage with different researchers and experts who have done this kind of thing before and make our curriculum more targeted toward those key skills and more effective in cultivating them. So I know that was kind of a lot.
That is a lot. I mean,
we have big dreams.
What I'm hearing though is there's the very long-term view. You want this to be a big program. You want it to be an impactful program, right? In order to do that, you need to have a lot, the infrastructure to take in, all of the people that are interested, have enough partners who are ready and willing to work with them. And at the same time, though, you want it to be effective because the impact doesn't happen unless it's effective, right? And that's where you're trying to think about, do we find researchers, people with program evaluation skills who can help us evaluate the effectiveness and tweak and refine to make sure that we have the right components, right? And but that piece takes time, right? Like that part to be able to first identify people who are willing, interested in evaluating the effectiveness, and then also like slow yourself down enough to a level of like comfortable discomfort. This is the life of an entrepreneur, is you have to be patiently impatient. And you might have, right now what I'm hearing is there's a bit more impatience than the patience to slow yourself down, right?
Very much so.
But you're recognizing, which is important, you're recognizing that you do have to slow yourselves down in order to catch up with yourselves when it comes to the operational infrastructure to keep it going in a realistically sustainable long-term way. And you've already identified some of those things, right? You've identified like, we want it to be effective. We want to prove that it works for us and for others. And we're still identifying our identity and clarifying that. And we are still building trust and navigating how we navigate disagreements. And all of those things are part of infrastructure. So does that sound accurate to you in sort of my reflection on that?
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. And you're spot on with the impatience. Impatience is it's a character flaw of mine that I will embrace, but having to work with a team has really taught me a lot about patience and how it really is a virtue, like we say it is.
Yeah. So when we come back from this next break, we'll sort of just talk through finding that balance that you're trying to strike in the last few minutes that we have when we return. So you're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest, Aynsley Szczesniak, who is the founder and executive director of Speak Out Sisterhood. We'll be right back in just a moment. Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills Show with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest, Aynsley Szczesniak of Speak Out Sisterhood. We were just talking about where Aynsley and her team are with the next challenge in growing their nonprofit. And it's not an unusual experience to be at this place for a lot of entrepreneurs. So that should just give you solace right there. That should give you comfort. The two things I picked up on that might be useful to you is as you are planning your next steps, but trying to focus on the current, it sounds like one of the things that you recognize about yourself, which is such an entrepreneurial thing, is impatience, right? You want to get to the vision. The vision is big, and you want to rush there as quickly as possible. But there's a piece of you that also wants to be thoughtful about it, which is great. And how do you strike the balance of being patiently impatient or impatiently patient is probably a better term. And so my first question to you is, if you are, and maybe a few of you on the team are more of the excitable, visionary, go-getter, enthusiastic influencer types, right? Who goes out there and brings everybody into the vision and gets everyone aligned around the vision. Do you also have members on your team that balance you out, who are much more focused on slowing down, thinking more methodically, carefully, the planful folks, the design folks, the spreadsheet folks, the folks who like think through at a much more detailed, slowed down level?
Oh, absolutely. 1000%. We would not be able to operate if we did not. Because
Awesome.
I am very much that big ideas, let's do this kind of person. And I've been really fortunate to be able to connect with some incredible young women, many of whom are very much that more methodical, let's get things done step by step kind of mentality, which has been great. I'll give a shout out especially to our Chief Operations Officer. Her name's Ava, and she is such a great complement to my spontaneity, because she's very procedural and let's get things done one by one, let's plan ahead, let's make the to-do items, and so having her as my right-hand man of sort, right-hand woman I should say, has been really it's really taught me a lot about where I need to improve myself, but also where having a team is so crucial, because when we first started out, we were still kind of figuring out what everyone's roles would be. And so over time, her role in particular has really transitioned a lot. But I think we found something that really fits who she is, because she's essentially the one making sure that all the other puzzle pieces fit together and all the other the gears are turning in the right way. And being able to know that I can rely on her to do that, and follow up with others. And while I can stay focused more on the big picture of, is this generally getting done, rather than are the small minute things also getting done that ultimately coalesce into the larger thing. has been really invaluable. So yes, we definitely have a team of diverse talents and diverse approaches to leadership, and I'm
That's
so thankful
perfect.
for that.
That is perfect. And what Aynsley described here, folks, is one of the ideal, there's a couple of different ways to have a power couple, and this is one of the ideal ways to have a power couple is the CEO visionary, externally focused, bring people into the vision kind of person, with the COO operational, internally focused, make sure the execution and implementation are thought through carefully so that you have a great outcome. And that is one of the great, power couples. And if you've got that on a team, and if you appreciate each other's strengths and not see it as annoying or causing conflict, that's when it turns into that power couple. Otherwise, it's like an oil and water relationship in some situations. But you've sort of been able to recognize, like, I need this person and this is why, and I recognize that she's a compliment to me. So that makes it work really well. So that goes into my second thought, which is more of a framework. The things that you're sort of having tension around is when we look at team development, you need to be thinking about productivity and relationships, and both of them have to be square, right? So if you have on a team too much focus on productivity, outcomes, results, and insufficient time to build the relationships and think about how we approach tasks and spending enough reflective time on how we work together, communicate with each other, it ends up being imbalanced, and it could create a toxic work culture, right? Because nobody cares about people. If you have the other way, excessive focus on the relationships, we care so much about each other, we don't bring up hard decisions, we don't bring up hard things, we don't exchange ideas because we're so worried about hurting each other's feelings or insulting people. It's a different kind of toxic culture. It's a frozen culture that isn't productive and overthinks all the people stuff at the risk of losing any sort of momentum. So it sounds like you're trying really hard to focus on those two. Like, have we spent enough time focusing on how we work together, how we approach things, how we communicate with each other? And are we also focusing on our outcomes and results and getting that down? Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. That is something that I've really been thinking a lot about recently as our team has been going through some changes. And I got some great advice from somebody who was he was a CFO of a startup here in Chapel Hill. And he gave me some great advice about assembling a team, not just of people who have the qualifications, but also have the passion for what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, what's going to get you through those hard moments are that understanding that we are all here for the same reason. We all care about the same goal and the same mission. And so maybe we aren't able to see it in the same way right now, but we ultimately recognize that we all have the same mission at heart. And so when it comes to balancing the productivity and the relationships, it does take time. I think we started out sort of in that too much focused on people, not enough on productivity, because I was it was really important to me that we felt like we could trust each other before we tried to do anything beyond that. But now that we know each other well enough, we've known each other for like 6 months now, almost. It's crazy to think about. And we know each other's strengths, we know each other's weaknesses, and so while we definitely aren't, like best friends, let's go, I'm going to spill all my deepest, darkest secrets to you. We are familiar with and trust each other enough that we know that when things have to be told more firmly, or when somebody has to be followed up with multiple times, it's not out of hatred for this person. It's just overall that recognizing that need to think about what's best for the group at large, even if that does mean having to take a step a little bit away from oh, we're all just friends, and we that's all we are.
Yeah,
And
that's great. And
yeah.
You know, did you all hear that she said this has all been done in 6 months? She pulled a team together to work together well and evaluated what's necessary in 6 months, which is kind of amazing. Now, as we start wrapping up, the other thing that she mentioned is what makes a real team is having a shared mission and vision, and she focused on that. The other three are, do we know our roles, and are we clear about our roles, and who's on the team and who's not on the team, and who's a decision maker and who's not? The other is reflexivity. Do we spend time with each other, connecting and reflecting on improving how we work together? And so there's other aspects of a real team. If you're interested in finding out more about that, you can always learn more about gotowerscope.com and our Leadership Academy there. I'll share more about that in just a second, but before I do that, let us share a little bit about Speak Out Sisterhood. If you're watching the recording, I'm going to share my screen for a second so you can also see it. It's speakoutsisterhood.org, and you can learn more about that Generation Yes internship, right? You can learn about them and about Aynsley. You can also learn about their symposium coming soon. How interesting, how exciting. Got a lot going on, Aynsley.
You know it.
So that's awesome. So what did you take away from today, audience? And more importantly, what's one small change you can implement this week based on what you learned from Aynsley? Share it with us on LinkedIn. You can find us there. You can also find us on Instagram. I know that she and I follow each other there too. Talkradio.nyc is also on Facebook and Twitter and Twitch, all over the place. But LinkedIn is where I live, and that's where I'd like to find out what you learned and respond to it. This is a live show, but we're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please subscribe to it, leave a review, share, help others. You can learn more about my company, TowerScope, at gotowerscope.com, as well as our Leadership Academy. I am Dr. Mira Brancu, your host of the Hard Skills Show. Thank you to talkradio.nyc for hosting. And thank you for joining us today, Aynsley. It's been great to have you and learn from you.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. Please go learn about what she's doing. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. Whatever you do, have a great rest of your day wherever you're tuning in from, and immediately hop off of this and look up Speak Out Sisterhood.
Thank you.
Take care.